kind of was, because I just was this person constantly looking for something he couldn't give.
At 85, Toni Tennille still carries that same soft warmth in her voice, the one that once made the world believe in love. For decades, she and Daryl Dragon, the Captain, were the golden couple of pop music, their hit "Love Will Keep Us Together" echoing through every radio in America. They smiled, they sang, they looked unbreakable, but behind those matching outfits and picture-perfect smiles was a silence that grew heavier with every year. While the world saw devotion, Toni lived with distance, a marriage filled with music, but starved of love. And after 4 decades of keeping her pain behind the curtain, she finally decided to tell the truth. What really happened between Toni Tennille and the man she shared the stage, and her life, with for 40 years, long before the fame and the matching sailor hats? Toni Tennille was just a bright-eyed girl from Montgomery, Alabama, growing up in a house where music was the family language. Her father was a jazz singer, her mother one of the first female TV hosts in the South, a woman who taught her that a strong voice could open doors. Toni learned piano before she could drive and spent her college years composing musicals instead of chasing boys. But when her father's business collapsed, the family moved to California, and the dreamer from Alabama had to start over. She played piano in bars, wrote jingles, and worked on small theater productions, all the while searching for a sound and a partner that could turn her songs into something real. Then one day, fate arrived in the form of a quiet, shy man behind a keyboard. Daryl Dragon. What began as a musical partnership would soon become something far more complicated, a love story written in melody and silence. When Toni Tennille first met Daryl Dragon, she was struck by his quiet intensity. He wasn't like anyone she'd met before, reserved, brilliant, and completely consumed by music. Daryl, nicknamed the Captain from his time with the Beach Boys, had a genius for arrangement and a mysterious aura that fascinated her. Together, they created a sound that was fresh yet timeless, blending her warm vocals with his meticulous production. Their chemistry on stage was undeniable, love wrapped in melody. When "Love Will Keep Us Together" topped the charts in 1975 and won them a Grammy, the world fell in love with their image, the smiling couple who made love songs feel real again. But behind those smiles, something quieter was unfolding. Daryl's silence wasn't shyness anymore. It was distance. Toni felt it, even when they were standing inches apart on stage. And as the spotlight grew brighter, the woman who sang about love began to realize she was singing alone. As the years passed, Toni Tennille began to see the cracks beneath the music. Daryl Dragon was no villain. He was a man trapped in his own silence, brilliant on stage but withdrawn in life. He built walls around himself that even love couldn't climb. He rarely spoke, avoided affection, and hid behind his instruments as if emotion were something to be feared. Toni tried everything: kindness, patience, forgiveness, but the connection she longed for never came. At interviews, they smiled for the cameras, pretending the lyrics they sang were still true. Behind closed doors, they lived like strangers bound by harmony, not heart. Still, Toni stayed, believing love could save him, that maybe one more song, one more tour would bring him closer. But love can't survive on melody alone, and one night, as the stage lights faded and the applause died away, Toni Tennille finally realized something inside her had gone silent too. That silence became unbearable. Toni Tennille had built her life around harmony, on stage, in love, in every note she sang. But now, even the music couldn't hide the emptiness. Daryl Dragon retreated further into himself, communicating only through work and routine. He controlled the finances, the schedules, the sound, everything except the one thing Toni needed most: warmth. She still admired his genius, still loved him in her own quiet way. But love without return is a slow kind of death. Friends saw the strain, but Toni kept smiling, insisting she was fine. Yet every song she performed began to sound like a confession, every lyric an echo of what she no longer had. After 40 years of applause, she finally stopped pretending. In 2014, Toni Tennille did the unthinkable. She walked away, not out of anger, but out of mercy, for him and for herself. But what happened after the divorce shocked everyone who thought their love story had ended there. After the divorce, most expected Toni Tennille to disappear quietly, to retreat from the spotlight and close the book on the Captain and Tennille. But that wasn't what happened. Even after leaving the marriage, Toni couldn't turn off 40 years of care. When Daryl Dragon was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, she moved to Arizona to be near him, checking on him daily, helping him manage his medication, cooking for him when he was too weak to stand. They no longer shared vows, but there was still something deeper than love, a kind of compassion that transcended everything they'd lost. Daryl, still the stoic captain, rarely spoke, but he always let her in one of their final moments together. Toni held his hand and whispered the words she had waited a lifetime to say. "I always loved you." He couldn't reply, but he squeezed her hand. When he passed in 2019, Toni said she felt peace, not sorrow. The pain had finally come full circle, transforming into gratitude. She had found closure not through bitterness, but through kindness. And as she looked back on her life, the fame, the silence, the love that couldn't be saved, she finally understood what her music had always tried to say. In the years that followed, Toni Tennille didn't chase nostalgia. She redefined it. Living quietly in Arizona, she began teaching music again, mentoring young singers, and performing at small community theaters. The woman once known for singing about love was now teaching others how to find it, not in fame, but in honesty. Her memoir, released in 2016, became more than just a celebrity tell-all. It was a guide for anyone who had ever loved too much, forgiven too long, and finally chosen themselves. Toni didn't write to expose Daryl. She wrote to understand him, and in doing so, understood herself. "He couldn't give me what I needed," she admitted, "but he gave me music, and through that, I found peace." Today, she still sings on occasion, her voice softer but richer, shaped by every ache it has carried. Fans who meet her often say she radiates calm, the kind that comes only after surviving the storm. But Toni's story isn't just about the end of love. It's about what comes after, the rebirth that happens when a woman learns to live for herself. And in that new beginning, Toni discovered something even greater than love itself: freedom. At 85, Toni Tennille has finally come full circle. The woman who once sang "Love will keep us together" now lives by a quieter truth: love will set you free. Her days are simple now, mornings filled with sunlight streaming across her piano keys, afternoons spent walking her dog through the Arizona desert, evenings teaching neighborhood kids how to find emotion in a single note. The fame, the glamour, the pressure, all of it feels like another lifetime. Yet, in her calm, there's a kind of wisdom that only comes from breaking open and rebuilding again. When Toni speaks about her past, she doesn't sound bitter. She laughs softly when she remembers the costumes, the TV specials, the endless tours. "We were everywhere," she says, as if still surprised by how big it all became. But when she talks about Daryl Dragon, her voice lowers, not with sadness, but reverence. She calls him brilliant, complicated, and afraid of feeling. There's no blame left in her, only understanding. It took her most of a lifetime to realize that sometimes love fails not because it isn't real, but because two souls simply speak different languages. Her story isn't a tragedy, it's a lesson in grace. Toni Tennille taught the world about devotion, and then, through her own heartbreak, she taught it something deeper, that love cannot survive without freedom, and freedom cannot exist without truth. She found her peace not in applause, but in solitude, not in being adored, but in being understood, first by herself, then by others. Today, when fans recognize her, they don't ask about the hits or the Grammys. They ask how she found the strength to walk away, to forgive, to keep singing when the song had ended. She always gives the same answer. Because love is still beautiful, even when it breaks you. Toni's voice, though softer now, carries more power than ever. It's the voice of someone who has lived through every lyric she ever sang. The high notes of fame, the dissonance of loss, the quiet resolve of healing. And as she sits at her piano, eyes closed, hands gliding gently over the keys, it's as if the years melt away. There's no captain, no stage, no audience, just Toni, the woman who finally learned that love doesn't always keep you together, but it will always keep you human. Because in the end, that's what her music was truly about. Not perfection, not performance, but the courage to love, to hurt, and to begin again.